Grandma was dying. Not like in the movies, no pristine hospital room, no weeping relatives, no violin music. It was quiet. Just quiet. Even the wall clock seemed to tick more softly, as if it too understood, the time had come. The house was filled with a strange calm. The curtains trembled in the draught, the trees rustled outside, and inside there was the faint scent of dried herbs and old linens. I sat by her bed. Third night in a row. Others came and went, but I stayed. Like a guard at an ancient temple. Grandma lay still, her breathing shallow and rare. Her eyes were half closed, lips dry. The doctor had said it was a matter of hours. Maybe a day or two. But I knew, she was waiting. For something. Or someone. Tom, she rasped suddenly. The words were barely audible, but I heard them. My name. I'm here, Grandma. I leaned in, took her hand. Her fingers were light, like bird bones, skin cool. I could feel something stirring in her, like she was gathering her last strength for one final leap. I need to tell you something. She looked straight into my eyes. Clear, piercing. The kind of look you get when someone is about to tell a truth they've buried their whole life. Of course. Tell me. Anything. I can't die without saying this. Her voice trembled, but there was steel in it. I had a child. Long ago. Before your father. I froze. What do you mean? She closed her eyes, paused. Every word seemed to cost her a piece of her soul. It was, your father. The world tilted. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. What? I could barely breathe. Your father, he's not my grandson. He was my son. Everything vanished for a second, the room, the clock, even Grandma. I sat in a void, where only one sentence echoed again and again. I gave birth to him, she whispered. In 1949. I was 17. I gave him, to my sister. It had to be done. My parents insisted. Shame, fear. I had no right to keep him. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And mine too. No one knew. Just her. She raised him as her own. And I was nearby. All his life. Watching. Loving, but from a distance. Why are you telling me this now? She smiled weakly. Because. I couldn't go without telling someone. And you needed to know. To forgive. Me. Him. Yourself. I had no words. I just held her hand and nodded, even though everything inside me was screaming. Forgive me, she whispered. For all of it. And then, she was gone. Just like that. Silently. And I was left sitting there, her hand still in mine, my heart bursting with questions, and one truth echoing in my head. Your father was my son. I sat next to her body for a long time. I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding her cold hand. The house was wrapped in silence, like amber. Even time itself seemed to pause, giving me a moment to absorb everything. My grandmother was, my real grandmother. But also my father's mother. So Uncle Henry, he was actually his brother. Not his uncle. And the woman I always called Grandma, she was his aunt, or rather, his legal mother. The world I had lived in for 34 years cracked beneath my feet. I slowly let go of her hand, pulled the blanket up over her, and walked into the kitchen. Everything looked the same, the old kettle, the familiar teacups, the box of tea she saved for guests. I poured myself a cup, not because I was thirsty, but because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. The others didn't arrive until morning. My mother, eyes swollen from crying. Aunt Emma, calm, even slightly annoyed, as if Mom's death had disrupted her weekend plans. They didn't know. No one knew. The funeral went as expected. Pastor's words, black suits, restless kids, closed casket. But I just stared at it thinking, you took a whole life with you. A whole secret. And now I'm the only one left to carry it. After the wake, I went into Grandma's room. Everything was untouched, the pink blanket, her glasses on the nightstand, a stack of books. I opened the top drawer of the dresser and found a small wooden box tied with a faded ribbon. Inside were letters. Old, yellowed, handwritten. Some on thin paper with watermarks, others on nearly worn-out postcards. I picked up the first envelope. On it, in neat script, for you, if the truth is ever needed. My hands trembled. I opened the letter. My son. My sorrow. My pride. I see you every day but cannot call you mine. I hear you call someone else Mom, and it isn't me. I have no right. I gave you up because I was afraid. Because I was a girl. But I love you. More than life. And even if you never know the truth, I am near. Always. I sat down on the floor in front of the dresser. The letter rested on my lap, tears falling onto the ink. She wrote to him. Never sent them. Just wrote, like prayers, to keep from breaking. I pulled out another. This one was dated 1973, the year my father joined the army. It spoke of fear, pride, and hope that he would come back alive. Everything she couldn't tell him, she poured into these pages. I went through the entire box. There were dozens of letters. Sometimes one a year, sometimes 3 or 4. They were a silent chronicle of her love. Each sheet a whisper of her soul. But the last one, it had my name on it. Tom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And it means you know. I prayed you wouldn't find out from strangers. That you would hear it from me. You are light. You are his echo. And he was mine. My boy I never got to hold. Forgive me. Not for weakness, but for silence. Love you always. Yours, Margaret. I closed my eyes. And in that moment, I realized, the truth now belongs to me. And with it, the weight of choice. Do I reveal it? Or bury it with her? I couldn't sleep for several nights. Insomnia, like an old acquaintance, crept into bed with me and whispered, now what? I stared at the ceiling, picturing Grandma, not in her chair with a knitted shawl and crossword books, but young, daring, in love. Margaret. 17 years old. Summer of 1949. She never talked about her youth. Always brushed it off with, war and work, same as everyone else. But now, holding her letters, I began piecing her story together from the fragments she left behind. In one letter, she described a summer evening in Baltimore, dancing to a live orchestra, the scent of jasmine in the air, and a young man in uniform, Raymond. A sailor. With a smile you could fall into and never want to leave. He held my waist so gently, as if afraid to break me. I laughed, pretending to be brave. I wanted him to stay. But he was leaving in 3 days. Raymond. The name didn't exist in any family albums or stories. Only here, in her letters, like a ghost cut from memory. In another letter, she wrote. Mother said I brought shame to the family. Father said nothing. He didn't raise a hand, just turned away and never called me his daughter again. I thought they'd kick me out. Instead, they came up with something worse, sent me to a home for girls in trouble, near Boston. 7 months along. I clutched the letter in my hands. Everything I thought I knew about my family turned out to be a set piece. And behind it, fear, exile, pain. A home for unwed mothers, back then, such places were common. Girls were hidden from sight. Then came the birth, immediate separation, and a return to society with a forced smile and silence. When I gave birth to him, they didn't let me hold him. Said it was a boy. Healthy. And took him away. I lay on a cold cot, staring at the ceiling, praying he'd never learn how I had betrayed him. She was 17. Then she returned home, where nothing was spoken aloud. Where the next Christmas the family posed by the tree with fake smiles, pretending nothing had happened. I found a letter mentioning her sister, Ellen. It was Ellen who took the child. Ellen couldn't have children, and the parents insisted, "It's a chance for both of you. Ellen gets a son. You atone for your shame." I remembered Ellen. Small, always tidy, with a soft voice. She died when I was 9. Never showed weakness. I called her Grandma. Margaret was always Aunt Margie. Cheerful, a bit odd, slightly disheveled, smelling of lavender and strawberry jam. Always around. Always close. But always one step behind. In her letters, Margaret wrote about every major event in his life, how he started school, fell off his bike, lost his first baseball game. She was in the bleachers. She clapped. But he looked at Ellen. I was there when he cried at graduation. I walked behind him when he proposed to your mother. I kept silent when he called Ellen the most wonderful mother in the world. Because I had no right to say otherwise. I closed the box of letters and pressed it to my chest. Now I understood where that strange tenderness in Grandma had come from, the one no one could explain. Why she saved every childhood drawing. Why she looked at Dad like she was always saying goodbye. She didn't just love him. She lost him before she ever had the chance to know him. I tried to picture the moment, the day Margaret came home. Summer, 1949. She was 18. Riding the train, alone, hollowed out, her belly flat, her breasts full of milk for no one. A bag on her lap. Inside, nothing but a letter from her parents, "We'll take you back if you forget." She returned to a house where she was no longer a daughter, just a presence. They gave her the basement room. Her name was missing from the family photo albums. Her father looked through her. Her mother spoke only in directives, dinners at 6. Don't forget the napkins. Only Ellen, the older sister, came to sit with her in the evenings. No blame. No questions. Just silence. 2 months later, Ellen was pregnant. Everyone was surprised. The doctors had said she was infertile after that riding accident. But suddenly, a miracle. No one asked questions. They simply rejoiced. Relatives filled the house with flowers, gifts, chatter. And Margaret, quietly in the kitchen, with pots and folded linens. I sewed his blankets. I ironed the shirts Ellen took to the hospital. I chose the name, Daniel. She said it was lovely. Then told everyone she thought of it herself. I didn't argue. The birth happened at a clinic in Baltimore. Ellen spent 3 days there. A room with windows facing the park. She returned with the baby, glowing like he really was hers. Margaret met them at the door, holding a bouquet of lilies. She didn't touch the baby. Just nodded, turned, and walked into the garden. I heard his cry when they entered the house. My son's first cry. It cut like glass. I stood beneath the apple tree biting my hand so I wouldn't scream with him. From that day on, Daniel was Ellen's son. Margaret, his aunt. A relative, nothing more. But she stayed close. Always close. She took him to the park. Told him stories. Taught him to ride a bike. Baked Saturday pies, Danny's favorites. He called her Aunt Margie, hugged her neck, tugged her braid. One day he asked, "Why don't you have kids?" I said, "I have you." He laughed, "But I'm Ellen's." I nodded. Smiled. Then locked myself in the bathroom and cried on the floor. Because he was right. He didn't know. And he wasn't supposed to. The family called it redemption. Everyone said Margaret had reformed. Became the model aunt. She even married, years later, a history teacher named Walter. No children. He died of a heart attack in 1968. I found his photo behind some books on a shelf. She never mentioned him. Walter was kind. He knew. I told him before the wedding. He said, "I won't replace your son. But I'll be here, if you need someone to cry with." And he was. Until he wasn't. And through it all, she watched Daniel. As he grew. As he studied. As he met my mother. As he became a father, my father. I was on the porch when you were born, Tom. I held Ellen's coffee while she screamed in labor. I stood in the corner when they brought you in. I remember how you squinted against the light. You looked like him. Like Raymond. My hands trembled, but I didn't step forward. I had no right. I read and felt something breaking inside me. These letters weren't just memories. They were motherhood in exile. A life lived at arm's length. A grief stretched over decades. And now, that grief was in my hands. What was I supposed to do with it? After reading the last letter, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought I could hear Grandma's footsteps, like when I was a kid. She'd shuffle down the hallway, slippers on the floor, kettle clicking in the kitchen, her voice softly humming some tune from the 40s. But it was all just memory's echo. I began to think of him. My father. Daniel. He died 5 years ago, suddenly, in his sleep. He was 62. No illness, no complaints, no warnings. He simply went to bed and never woke up. We buried him on the hill, under a maple tree, just like he once asked. It rained that day, and Mom said even the sky was crying. My father was a complicated man. Not cruel. But closed off. Hard on himself and others. He worked as an accountant his whole life, quietly, without fuss. He liked order, silence, good shoes, and Sunday donuts. He rarely hugged us, but he always showed up when needed. Like a metronome, steady, precise, unemotional. I didn't understand him. As a kid, I feared him. As a teen, I resented him. And now, after reading Grandma's letters, I understood, he felt like an outsider too. He grew up in a house where they called him son, but maybe he always sensed something was off. Maybe in the glances he couldn't explain. In the silence the women around him lived in. Maybe he sensed, his mother wasn't who he thought. But who she really was, he never knew. I often wanted to tell him, she wrote. Especially after he became a father. I saw how he looked at you, puzzled, cautious. As if afraid to do it wrong. But I couldn't. I was afraid he'd reject me. Or worse, believe me, and hate me. I remembered once, Dad told me, parents don't have to be understood. They just have to be there. I'd scoffed then. But now those words hit like a revelation. He was there. Always. Even when he didn't understand why. At his wedding, I gave him a watch, she wrote. Old, engraved. He didn't get why I chose it. Just said, thanks, Aunt Margie, and hugged me. First time in years. I kept my composure, but inside, I was screaming. After he died, Grandma changed. She grew quieter. Spent hours on the porch just staring at the sky. I thought she was just lonely. But now I know, she'd lost her son. Again. I buried him twice. First, when I signed the adoption papers. Second, when we lowered his casket into the ground. I saw them all differently now. Dad. Grandma. Ellen. Like scenes from a single tragedy, where everyone tried to do the right thing, and only hurt each other more because of it. I sat in the living room, the box of letters on my lap, feeling the emptiness fill with something new. Not forgiveness. Not peace. Understanding. It was stronger than words. Now I knew why my father was the way he was. Why he kept people at arm's length. Why he looked at Grandma with respect but without warmth. He didn't know. But maybe. He felt it. I remember the day my father died as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The morning was ordinary, coffee, toast, the radio muttering about the weather. Mom called him down for breakfast. He didn't answer. She went upstairs and, that was it. I heard her scream from outside, where I was washing the car. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. He was lying there, as if asleep, hands on his chest, face calm. Only his fingers were already cold. The ambulance, the doctors, the questions, the formalities, it all happened quickly and with a strange lack of emotion. A heart attack, they said. Quick. Painless. Mom held herself together as best she could. She didn't cry much. But every night, she'd leave the hallway light on and wander the house like a ghost. At the time, I didn't understand how she was grieving. We never talked about emotions. In our family, that was something like taboo. Love was shown through sandwiches, silent care, a stern, I hope you understand. Now, knowing the truth, I began to reframe everything I thought about those days. How at the funeral, Grandma stood off to the side, not with us. Her face pale, lips tight, eyes dry. I thought it was shock. But now I understand, it was grief. Not the allowed, accepted kind. The real kind. She had lost her son, whom she could never call her own. I didn't walk beside him on his final journey, she wrote. I didn't place flowers in the casket. I just stood in the shadows. And whispered, "Forgive me, Danny. Forgive me for always being near, but never with you." The thought that she carried all that alone, physically hurt. Every time she passed him the sugar, straightened his collar, praised his achievements, it had all been an act of restrained love. Voiceless. Hopeless. After the funeral, she fell ill. Officially, a cold. But I saw it, it was grief. She barely ate. Sat on the porch in the same old sweater, staring off like she was waiting for someone. I tried talking to her, but she brushed me off. Only once, when I asked if she wanted to move in with us, she said, "No, Tom. I need to be where he grew up." I didn't understand then. But now, every word stings like a splinter. When he left, I felt young again. As if everything was repeating. First they took him from me. Then I gave him away willingly. And now, he's gone forever. And there's no getting him back. I remembered the day he died, how Mom and I sorted through his things, a watch, a notepad full of scribbles, an old newspaper. In one drawer, a photo. Black and white, faded. Me, Mom, Dad. And Grandma, off to the side. Smiling, but like the camera had caught her half ready. Now I understood, she was always there. Always just outside the frame. Not because she wasn't invited in, but because she never allowed herself to step into the light. I couldn't be his mother. But I tried to be his shadow, to protect without pressing, to be there without demanding. I hope he felt that. Just a little. I closed my eyes. I wanted to scream, from helplessness, from sorrow for them both, for everything unsaid. But I didn't scream. I just sat there. Listening to the silence they both now lived in, my father and my grandmother. A silence that, at last, had begun to speak. A few days had passed since Grandma's funeral. The house felt empty, like a theater after the final curtain, actors gone, props forgotten, silence lingering. The kitchen still held her scent, lavender and vanilla. A teacup sat on the windowsill, dried leaves clinging to the rim. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. The box of letters sat on my desk at home, covered with a cloth. I hadn't touched it for days, but I could feel its presence, as if the letters were alive, waiting for me to return, to open them, to read. Or, to decide. I didn't know what to do. Tell someone. Who? My mom. Aunt Emma. Or, no one. Carry this truth alone, as Grandma had done all her life. You're the only one who knows. Now the truth is yours. But so is the choice. That line from her last letter wouldn't leave my mind. I kept rereading her words, searching them like instructions for a broken life. I remembered Grandma's hands, thin, freckled, warm. How she stroked my hair when I was sick. How she told stories without even looking at the book. How once she said, "A secret is like a nail in the heart. It holds something up, but it hurts all the same." I started writing. Just opened a notebook and let everything spill out. Memories of Dad. Thoughts about Grandma. About lies, silence, love that had no voice. A childhood full of shadows. I wrote, and cried. A 34-year-old man, in a suburban Baltimore apartment, late at night, under a desk lamp, with cold coffee in a mug. It felt like a movie, only with no audience. On the third day, I opened the box again. At the very bottom, a small envelope, unmarked. Inside, a photograph. Old, faded. A young Margaret, and a little boy, about 5 years old. He's holding her hand, looking at the camera. She's smiling, but, only for him. On the back, in her handwriting, "My boy. My pride." If only for one moment, we were real. I held the photo and realized, I couldn't bury this truth in silence. I couldn't let her love vanish into dust again. But who should I tell? My mom. She had lived her whole life believing one version of reality. If I told her the truth, then what? Pain. Doubt. Emptiness. Aunt Emma. Cold, pragmatic. She'd shut the conversation down. Or say, why dig up old bones? And yet, she might have known more than anyone. If you choose to speak, do it kindly. People don't always want to know. But sometimes, the truth is the only thing that brings peace. I stepped outside. The morning was crisp, smelling of leaves. Autumn was entering the city like a widow, quietly, with dignity. And suddenly I understood, I was the keeper. Not a judge. Not an avenger. Not a revealer. Just a man entrusted with a story. A story bigger than me. And now, it lived not in a box, but inside me. I hesitated for days. Went in circles, opened the box, closed it. Picked up the phone, put it down. Inside me, two voices argued, one said to leave it alone, let the past stay buried. The other, that truth doesn't deserve to die in darkness. The decision didn't come suddenly. It came quietly. I just woke up one morning, looked at myself in the mirror, and knew, if I didn't say it, I'd regret it forever. I went to see Mom. She still lived in the house I grew up in. It felt smaller now. The trees outside taller, the fence sagging. Everything was the same, and yet nothing was. "Tom," she said, surprised when she opened the door. "You were just here last week." "I can come more often," I tried to smile. The kitchen was unchanged, floral tablecloth, kettle, cookie jar. She offered tea, but I declined. My heart was pounding like I was about to take a final exam. "Mom," I began, "I found something at Grandma's. After she passed." She grew still. Set her cup down. Sat across from me. "What kind of something?" I took out the envelope. One of the letters that didn't speak directly about Dad, but made the truth unmistakable. I placed it in front of her. Letters. From her. To me. There's something important in them. About Dad. She was silent. Picked up the envelope, looked at it, but didn't open it. I don't read other people's letters, Tom. They're not someone else's. They're part of the story. Ours. Yours. You shouldn't have found them, she said quietly. It would have been better if she took it with her. I thought that too. But, you have a right to know. Dad was her son. Not her nephew. She gave him to Ellen. Their parents forced her. Shame, fear, all of it. Mom stared out the window. Then she whispered. I always felt there was something unusual between them. I thought it was just a close bond. They were alike. The way they looked at things, their posture. But she never said a word. She wanted to. She wrote. She kept it all inside. But she was afraid. Afraid to hurt you. And she still did. No, Mom. Not her fault. They silenced her. She loved him. Her whole life. Mom shook her head. Then, unexpectedly, she got up, walked into the living room, and came back with an old photo album. She sat down, flipped through a few pages, and stopped. She showed me a photo, Dad, maybe 8 years old, sitting on Margaret's lap. She's hugging him, he's laughing. I remember thinking then, how much she adored him. Like a mother. She looked at me. And I was already dating him. But it didn't seem strange at the time. Now it makes sense. We sat in silence for a long time. Only the kettle could be heard coming to a boil. I don't know what to do with this, Tom, she said. It doesn't fit anywhere. It's not a puzzle. It's a scar. You don't solve it. You just accept that it's there. She closed the album. Took a deep breath. Thank you for telling me. It hurts, but now I understand more. Maybe I'll forgive her. And myself. She hoped you would. I saw a tear roll down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. And I knew, I had done the right thing. A couple of weeks passed. I was slowly returning to normal life, work, meetings, Saturday market, the neighbors and their endless doorstep chatter. But deep inside, something still hummed. A dull ache, like after a fall. Not sharp, but constant. I thought it was over. The letters had been read, the talk with Mom had happened, the secret exposed. But the story, it turned out, wasn't finished. One evening, just as I was about to turn off the light, the doorbell rang. Package, the courier said. For Thomas Riley. No return address. Inside, a small box, an old envelope, and a short note. You need to know not just her truth, but mine. E. Ellen. My heart sped up. I carefully opened the envelope. The handwriting was neat and strict. The paper, aged and yellowed. The letter was dated 1982. I sat down and began to read. Tom, if you're reading this, then the truth is out. And you're probably angry. But before you judge me, please, read to the end. I didn't ask Margaret to give me her child. That was our parents' decision. I agreed. Because I was broken too. I had no hope. I wanted to die. And then they said, you will be a mother. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it was salvation. But it turned out to be both a sentence and a blessing. I loved him. Truly. Not right away. At first, as a duty. Then, as my own. I knew he didn't come from me. But children born of the heart are still children. You know what I mean, Tom. I'm sure you do. Margaret. She stayed close. And I allowed it. I didn't take her son from her. I shared him. As best I could. She played the role of the shadow. I, the light. But only together did we give him warmth. Yes, I lied. I lived in a lie. But was I alone in that? How many families survive on silence? How many secrets lie beneath embroidered tablecloths? I'm not proud. But I'm not sorry either. Because your father grew up to be a good man. Despite everything. When he died, I felt that we were both widows, Margaret and I. Only I lost a son born from another's womb. And she, the one she bore but never held that first day. If you're angry, be angry. You have the right. But know this, your family is not a mistake. Not a shame. It's made of tears, and love, and fear, and choices. Of pain. But it's yours. And now, your truth matters more than our lie. I finished reading and sat there, pressing the letter to my chest. Ellen didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't justify herself. She just told the truth. And that was more honest than any confession. I realized, none of them were villains. Margaret and Ellen, they lived the only way they knew how. The lie didn't destroy them. It saved them. Twisted their lives, yes, but gave them a chance. My father was born from pain. Raised in silence. And he became a man who loved quietly, but deeply. That's how I remembered him. And now, knowing everything, I loved him even more. I returned to Grandma's house again in October. Leaves blanketed the path, the air thick with smoke and apples. I walked across the creaking floorboards and stood at the window where she used to sit. It was quiet. Only the old clock ticked, as if still doing her work, marking moments that now belonged only to memory. I brought the box of letters and placed it on a shelf in her cabinet. Not to hide it, no. But because every story deserves rest. These letters had lived their life. They had done their part. Now, it was my turn. I often wonder, what if Grandma hadn't confessed? What if the letter had stayed in the drawer? What if I'd never opened that box? Would I live differently? Or would something deep down have still led me to the truth? A secret is like ice on a river, she once wrote. You can walk on it, but eventually, it will crack. And I understood, it's not about when the truth comes. It's about what you do with it. I decided not to tell Aunt Emma. No confrontation, no explanation. She made her choice. I made mine. I didn't write a book. Didn't go to the papers. Didn't tell the world. This story isn't for sensation. It's for the heart. For those who've ever felt that not everything in their family has been said. Who've looked at old photographs and seen something hidden. Who've felt, love was there, just buried deep. We often think the truth is light. But sometimes, it's autumn fog, soft, sorrowful, concealing, but real all the same. Now, when I pass the family photo album, I don't feel angry. I smile. Because I know, behind every face is a drama. Behind every glance, pain, choice, love. And you? Have you ever felt that your family holds something more than what's been told? That an old letter, a forgotten journal, a strange comment might open a whole different world? Tell me in the comments. Share your stories. Maybe together we'll build something that helps others not be afraid of the truth. And if this story moved you, subscribe. There's more to come. Autumn stories. Stories of memory. Stories where truth whispers through time.